This will be video number 28 in the series of the odds and ends hit and miss. And today we're going to make the gas tank. And I'm going to tell you what I've learned through gas tanks through the years. There's a few things that are important. And I'll give you my design. This pickup has a filter in it, which is very handy because you know the fuel that you use has dust in it, and that'll take out the dust. So what I start out with is this brass tubing, and this is what you call a tailpiece for a sink. And it's a little harder to find it without the chrome plating on it, but if you go on Amazon, you can find lots of them. They're about, I think an 8-inch one or a 12-inch one is like $8 or $10 or something, and you can make two out of it. So that's what I use. It's very easy to get, and it makes a nice gas tank. Well, the next thing we have to do is make the end, and I'll show you how we make the ends. And I used to make them out of 1.5 inch solid round, but that's kind of a waste because every time you part it off, you waste about 3/16 of an inch of that thing. So I started making them out of 1/8 inch flat stock, and you could actually use 1/16. And I'll show you how I do that. I had some old brass angle iron that somebody gave me. It was a part of a brass bed, believe it or not. And what I do is just cut a square piece like that, and then I solder it onto here and put it in the lathe and turn it around. So the first thing I do is put a prick punch mark right in the middle. Then I take my dividers and draw a circle on it. It's just a tiny bit larger than that pipe, so I can see where to place the pipe to get it in the center. You can see that I can just get the edge right there and solder it on. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but somewhere as near is helpful. So I'm going to saw the corners off of it to avoid too much lathe work, and that's the first thing. Okay. What I use is, this is a piece of brass pipe that I got somewhere in the dump years ago, and it's really handy for soldering to things and putting in the lathe. I just place that on there like that and soft solder it on, and that's plenty strong. Take a minute to heat that up. Actually, I'll put 2 torches on it and it'll work faster. You can see it had solder on it before from the last job, and I just put it on there like that and run it around, make sure it's all the way around. Okay, now I'll just turn it around first before I measure it. The corners off of it. Almost round. There it is. Now we'll measure it. 1.5 inches OD. It's just got to go down about 65 thousandths. You can see it's pretty close. Ooh, another 15 to go. That looks good. And you can leave a little bit extra on there because you're going to put it back in the lathe and finish it anyway. So if it's a little too big, it's good. If it's a little too small, well, that's not so good, but it'll work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this stop at about halfway through for the soldering joint. It's only 20 thousandths thick. So I'm just going to take off 10 at first and see how that looks. That shouldn't fit on there yet, which it doesn't. See exactly how much I gotta go. Go another 5, try it. Shouldn't quite fit yet. Almost. Boy, that's almost it. Probably a thou will do it. Now, you have to be careful. This end was cut off with a pipe cutter. I don't know where, but it might have been at the factory, so it's a tiny bit smaller. That fits on there good now. I'll take it out and unsolder it and put the tank together. Just clean it up a little bit so the solder will take. So this is brass. All I have to do is use standard flux and a little bit of regular. I should clean this off too a little bit. It's going to run around there with a 3M pad on both ends. Just going to go around the inside of here. That's it. And then, once I put it on there, I'm going to drop a couple of pieces of solder inside of it and push them up against the edge and then heat it. Okay. Put those two in there. And then it'll run right around. Actually, probably one would do it. There it went. Look down inside there if you can. Now we're going to put the second end on, but we can't put the second end on until we drill the two holes in it, because what will happen is it'll cause pressure and you'll never stop it from leaking because it'll always blow a hole out through it. So you want to drill these two holes before you put this end on. So the filler and the pickup can go anywhere actually. You can't get them too close to the end. I usually go in about a 1/2 inch, and that's plenty. And but if you could put it right in the middle if you wanted to. But I like to put them about a 1/2 inch like this one, about a 1/2 inch from the end. I put a couple of prick punch marks and drill some holes. I'm going to put a piece of rod stock on there for backup and slide this on there and put a couple of prick punch marks in it. I can see it there. And I've got a line on there so that they're right straight across. I'm just going to eyeball that straight up because it's only, what I say, 20 thousandths thick, so it doesn't matter if it's perfectly straight in there, just somewhere near. I take a slotting drill and go through it, and then a sheet metal drill and finish the hole. I'll have to measure and see what size they are. Now I'm going to switch over to a sheet metal drill so I can get it any size I want. I've got to measure and see what size I want that hole and mark it. I'd like that a little bigger than 3/8, but yeah, there it is right there. 13/32 is right here. Just a hair under, so I'll just have to go to the next one. I'll show you. There's a different one here. It's a little more coarse, but as you can see, there's a lot of crap in there. You don't want to leave all that stuff in there. You want to get that nice and clean. So I'm just going to blow it out. I'm going to clean these holes out with the deburring tool. I don't want any of that stuff falling inside the fuel tank, even though the filter will take it out, but you clog up the filter, you get too much crap in it. A little tougher to solder from the inside. So what I do is put on my flux, then put 2 pieces right here, and then stick this on top of it and heat it. Soldering it from the outside, it just gets a lot over the outside. See, this I have to clean off. It's pretty easy to clean off in the lathe, and this here actually is going to be turned off. So I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to put a little dab here to hold that in place, and a little dab there. That'll hold the solder in place. Okay. So now, I want to heat that up, and I'm going to put it on this block so it doesn't take so much heat that way. All the way around. Yep. Got it. I think you can see it on this side, probably.
There we go. Yep. You can see it.
So the next thing I'm going to do before I put these on, I'm going to clean this up a little bit because it's a little easier to get it in the chuck without that there. Actually, after thinking about it, I think I have to go to the bigger chuck because I've got to put a relief inside of here for looks, and I don't dare to do it with it sticking out that far. See, now I can put that all the way in there. It'll be a little safer to do the end. Because I can't bite it tight because of that hollow tubing. It'll crush it. Just taking the solder off of there. So now we're going to do this little reveal. It doesn't matter how deep it is. I think this is like 50 thousandths or something. And it doesn't matter. I just eyeball that and say, well, that looks good. If the 2 ends aren't alike, nobody will notice. Somewhere near center. That's good. Actually, I want that a little above center. Not much, but just a hair. This is basically a boring operation. Doesn't really matter how deep you go, but I like to go about 60,000. That's it right there. That looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks kind of like a fuel tank. Let's do the other end. There it is. So the next step is to put the 2 little nibs on the top of the tank. The, what would you call them? The threaded flanges so that the cap and the pickup tube can screw into it. And you have to have a 1.5 radius, no, actually a 3/4 inch radius on that so it solders down good. So this is set at 3/4. I set it for 4. I'm just going to double check it, make sure I got the right one. my handy jig here. I showed this jig before. It has a 1/2 inch hole here and a 3/8 hole here. And the center of this hole is exactly 2 inches from that end, and the center of this hole is 2 inches from that end. And I have magnets on the end to hold the square. So if I put this in there, a 1/2 inch hole, bring that square up, and set this to, let's see, all I did is set this at 1 1/4 inches, so it has to be 3/4 to there, and 3/4 and 3/4 is 1.5 inch radius. So now I just want to center this on here. And I can see by the pattern on there that it's just about right. Yeah, that's good. We'll move it in about 10. There's the radius. Now I've already done that to a long bar, in which I'm going to actually make the parts out of. This one is just to demonstrate how I did the radius. So what I usually do is put the radius on both ends of this big long bar, and that way I don't have to go back and go to the milling machine again. I just turn the bar around and make the second one. There's going to be I think that's a 5/16 24 thread on that. So the first thing is to put the thread hole in there. 9/32 drill, which gives you the least thread. But I don't need a lot of thread here because it's just the cap. And if you don't have to seal it, so that just enough thread to hold it in there is fine. So I'm just going to use the larger drill. It'll be easier to tap. I'm going to put a pilot hole in there too, so I'm using brass drills. I'll go in with 1/8 and 1/4, and then I'll go in with the tap drill. I'm going to just make it 5/16 and just cut it down just a little bit. So if I go in there a 1/2 inch, that should be plenty for the tap. Well, this is the 9/32 drill. I'm going to tap that.
Go ahead.
Just to be safe, I'm going in there with a bottoming tap to make sure the thread goes far enough in so that I don't leave a little space at the top. That should do it. I got to reset the height of that again because I moved that up for the boring operation in the ends of the tank. So I'm just going to set that up down a little bit. Now what I'm doing here is just putting a little indent on it to make it look neat. Clean it up a little bit, I can see it better. Go in another 5. That's good. I'll park that off at 5/16. There's 1, 2, 3, 12. That's going to clear the chuck, I guess. Yeah, that's good. There it is. Make another one of those. So now I'm just going to turn this around, do the same thing on the other end. We won't show that. It'll be kind of boring. But we need 2 of those. Okay, that's just soft solder. And all I do on these is I have a little pin that I put down in there. I'll have to get it. So what I have here is a piece of aluminum plug that just fits inside that thread. So I can just put this on there like that, and I center it the best I can, but I know that it's not not incorrect because the aluminum plug is in there. Right there. I get the second one out here. I'll just heat that up and solder it. We got it. I'm just going to use this little torch this time so I don't blow the piece out of the way. That went all the way around. Yep, that's it. The next thing we're going to do is make the 2 feet. And those are, I've got them 1 3/8 long. And I need 2 of them, so I'm going to saw those off. 5/16" square brass stock. I want to put these magnets in the bottom here at exactly 1 inch apart. So I've got 1 3/15. So what's half of? So all I have to do is take the 3/15 off. So I've got 0.315 divided by 2 equals 157. So if I go 157 on here, I should be 1 inch apart. Now 157 from the ends, and I'm going to put in two magnets there and see what I've got. And I got to mark them 156. No, 156. That'll give you the center of the 2 magnets. These magnets are 3/16 diameter. That's what I usually use, and I think they're 135. Okay. I should mark that on the outside of the tube so I don't have to keep doing that. So I got to prick punch these and drill them, and then we'll put the radius in. What I usually do to get these flat and straight in the vise is I put them down here like this, line them up, put the vise on top of them, and clamp the vise up. And I know they're level with the vise. And spot drill them, and drill 4 holes, and then we just, the last thing I do is epoxy them in. You don't do that right away because you've got to solder them on. You don't want to heat them up. It ruins the magnets. So you always put those in the last thing. I want to get the depth somewhere near right. So I'm going to set this dial indicator. Let's test one in there. I don't want to go too deep. Yep, that's perfect. So, as you can see, that's nice and flush. So now I got to put the radius in there. It's the same tool that I use for the little threaded piece that go on top of the gas tank. This, clamp it in, and then I'm going to pull this one almost all the way back. Oh, just put it in there a little bit so I don't hit it. So I found the easiest way to center this is just take a cut. See where you are. And now I'm going to measure from both ends and see where I go. What I'm doing is just centering that as I go in. I'm going in and taking 10/1000 cut. And now I'll measure it as I can't see if it's not centered. Get about 7/16 on this end. And on that end we have about the center. It doesn't really matter how deep you go in here. I'm just going to measure this one. Leaving about 3/16 sticking out the end.
Perfect. Wow, that's gorgeous.
Now we'll do the second one. Did I do it right this time? This should have cooled off good. Take the plugs out of it. We're going to turn this over. Make sure that those are straight down. I'm going to put these on here. And I have a jig for that. So this little jig, what that does is gives me exactly 2 inches apart on the holes. So if I put this on here, thusly, and center it by eye, that would be it. So I'm going to put a little flux on it and just do that and solder them on there and make sure it looks straight. I'll put this on here first like this so I get an idea where it goes. Put the other one on. Now, just want to make sure that the fittings on the other side are straight down and this is level by eye. And that's it. Heat that up and solder it on there. Now, I don't want to heat it up enough to make the ends fall out, so I'm heating the big thick piece up mostly. It'll heat the other part up very easily. Once this piece gets hot, the solder will take to it. There it goes. So now I'm going to show you how to make this pickup tube. Now this pickup tube has a filter in it.
Got it?
This filter is what they put in fuel injectors for automobiles, and you can buy them on Amazon for a little money. I think I got 20 of them for like $12 or something. So they're not expensive. But you see what I did? That fits right in there. And then this part here has an O-ring in it.
Hold it steady. Yep.
And when I screw that on there, the O-ring seals the little gap between the two of these and also seals the gap down. So that's the only O-ring that you actually need. I have another O-ring on the bottom here. You can put that on, and that's just to hold it in place after you adjust it, but it's not necessary to seal that part.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the collet chuck on this. Not because it's really necessary, but this is kind of a big clunky chuck to be using for that. The collet chuck is much easier, or a smaller chuck. And, so I got to make a piece of 5/16 threaded rod for the gas cap and the fuel pickup. Now, let me see what the hole is. start out with a 3/16 hole in there about 3/4 of an inch, 6/25 would be 5/8 of an inch. Let me get the brass drill.
According.
So I'm going to go in here 5/8, 6/25 with a 3/16 inch drill. Now I'm going to just round the end of it a little bit with a file. And then I'm going to drill in for that filter. The filter is 240 OD. Has to be just somewhere near the near flush, so that we'll seal with that little O-ring. Take the C drill. Go in there about 115. Now let's see, that fits right in there perfect. Still just a whisker too deep for off of here. There it is. Finished drilling through with a 3/16 inch drill. The tube I'm using is 220. So 187 is no problem for the through hole. Now I'm going to part that off to length, which I think is 5/8. I thought it was 5/8, but I guess it's 550. That's all it is. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 550 right there. Tube is 7/32, so I'm going to drill in the other end with 7/32. Now I've got this little handy little jig, and I've screwed that 5/8 piece into there, and I can now drill the other end. Take the burr off it first. Now this is just for the tube, so the depth doesn't really matter. I got to go in there enough so it stays in there. I'm going to go in about at least 300,000. Now that is finished. So as you can see, that piece of tubing fits right in there, like that. And I can solder that in there when I get the rest of it finished. So now we got to make this little cap thing. So what I do is I make a knurled piece, and then I take another piece and screw it in there just a little bit, because I want the back end of this absolutely flat. And I can't thread it to the bottom and have it flat. So I have to do it in 2 pieces. So this is a piece of 1/2 inch. And what I'm going to do is put a thread through it, and so that's the same bit that I used before. I think it's a J drill. Now, let me just check that. I can check it real quick here. Yeah, it's a J drill. Got to get in there deep enough so I can start the thread in. 400 thousandths, that should do it. I'm just going to get that thread started in there. I only need a few threads. So the next thing I'm going to do is put the knurl on the outside of this one. Now brass clogs up these knurls quite a bit. So what I have found that the same thing you can use on the file is chalk, and that keeps it from sticking so bad. I just put some chalk on there. You put it on the knurl or the part. That looks pretty good. Now I'll part that off. I think it's about 1/4 inch. You measure it here. Yeah, just exactly 1/4 inch. I like to clean up this side too when I do it, just to make it go in. 1, 2, 50. I'm just going to take the burr off the end of it and it's finished. So the next piece I'm going to make is this, and that is going to be flat on the inside, and it's got to fit in there a little bit so it'll be in place for the solder. So I'm going to make that out of 7/16. So what I'm going to do is make that fit into there. Just enough so that it holds the thing in place while I solder it. So we want that to be it's got to be 280 for that to go in there, I think. Around 280. What have I got here? So I can take off 10 twice. Oh, 5 more about. Just a little more. Maybe I better take a hair off of it and just have it drop in. Now, what I'm going to do is part this off here and then put it all together and then finish it. Now this has a 1/8 hole up through it, so I might as well do that now. It's real easy to do. I got it right here in the lathe. So the thickness of this cap is only 270. So I'm going to go in there about 200 thousandths with an 1/8 inch drill. So I'll be leaving about 60 thousandths up in here, or 70 thousandths. Actually, I have to go 270 plus the thickness of that, which is about 50 thousandths. $270. 1, 270. So now what I'm going to do is solder these two pieces together, thusly. And so you have your flat surface inside there for the O-ring to seat against. And then I have to drill the tube hole in here, and and round it off, that'll be finished. I'm just putting flux on this part. Where'd you put my solder, Jim? My little roll. So I'm just going to test this on the top. Yeah, it's hot enough. So now I'm going to hit the seam here. I hope it goes all the way around. There it does. And all the way around then. Because I'm going to file off the top. I don't care about that. So I just screwed this onto a piece with the had that 5/16 thread on it. so I can finish it off. I'm gonna back that right up against there so it doesn't screw on further when I touch it. Didn't quite get enough off of the top of that. Now I'm going to take that over to the drill press and drill a 1/8 hole in it. Leave it right in that same fixture. Actually, I'm going to give that just a tiny bit of an up angle so that when I put the tube in there, it won't be exactly level. It'll be up just a little bit. There we go. I can probably go right through there with the spotting drill. Let's see. The reason it's a 1/8 hole is because the tubing I use for gas line is 1/8. If you use a different size, you'd have to put a different size on, obviously. But I try to use 1/8 for everything. That's 1/8. Okay, that met the other hole in there. That's good. All I do is sort of a short piece of this stuff in there, and that's it. We won't show you that. It's kind of boring. So now this goes on to here with an O-ring to seal it. And this is the dip tube. So I got to figure out what length to make this. It's going to screw in there about that far. So I'm going to cut this off, say right about there for now. So I'm sawing this off a little too long. Bottom of the dip tube, I put a piece of 3/16. Probably doesn't matter what length it is. It can go way up in here if you want to, but where the check ball is, I just put enough in there to get a good solder joint. And it has to have a hole in it that's less than 1/8 because I use a 1/8 ball bearing. Let me get the ball bearings. You see that? That's the 1/8 inch ball sitting on top of that hole. Now that hole, I'll tell you what size it is. I did that in the lathe before. 7/64. This is the 3/16 inch rod that fits inside the pickup tube. I'm just going to cut the end off of it. Just a little, that hole is just a little too big on this one. Well, let me get the 7/64 drill. I'm not sure exactly the right size hole to put in there. I've always gone a 1/64 under the size of the ball, but on the bigger ones you have to go a little more. But this, I use the 1/8, so. Now I'm going to cut a piece off. Go in there maybe a 1/4 inch for the thing. And before I part it off, I'm going to sand it off so it solders in easy. I'm going to clean up the inside of the tube just a little bit so that I make sure the solder. For that I have a little round file here. I just want to make sure the solder sticks good. Put on some flux in the hole, some on the part. I'm leaving that out a little bit so I can get the solder on it, and then I'll just push it in after I get it hot. Just going to slide those two together. Cool it off. On the bottom of these tubes, I always take a triangular file and file a little notch there So if it gets shoved right down to the bottom of the tank, it won't matter. It'll come through where the notch is. It doesn't take much of a notch to do that. Just a tiny notch.
Got it.
So I'm going to put the ball inside there. Put that on something solid and take a brass rod, which is softer than the ball. Whoop. Put this down in here and stake it with a hammer. And then I'm going to test it. I can suck up on it, but you can't blow it. Of course, you don't want to suck the ball in, but. And you can get a tiny bit of leakage there because you've got air, and fuel won't do that, but just make sure you get a fairly good seal. I like that. That's good. So now, we have to adjust the length of it. This goes in here. I put it in the tank, and so that's hitting the bottom right there. So I want to go in about that far with the thread. So I'm just going to measure that, and that's what I'm going to take off the tube. I'm going to take off about 5/16 off of this tube to save the ball. 5/16. You're going to mark this on the height gauge. You may have to cut that a couple of times before you get it exactly right, but you don't want it to be hard against the bottom. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is screw this on here. See? There's a gap there. So I'm just going to take a little more than that off of the tube and I'll have it. Because this actually goes up quite a ways. Because there's an O-ring in there. Actually, I can put the O-ring in there and show you. Okay, with the O-ring partially compressed, I'll screw that in there again. You can see I've got a good 1/8 inch gap. Probably, if I take a little more than an 1/8 inch off of it, I'll be good. Yes, and then we'll solder it in there. So, with the filter in there and the O-ring, same thing again, it binds. See, I can screw that all the way to the bottom now.
Hold it.
It's not hitting the bottom of the tank. That's good. So now, the reason I did all of this way, is so that you can change the filter and you can get at the ball to clean it. It's not soldered together, so you drop the ball in there, you put your filter in, you screw your cap on, and that's it. So now all I have to do is solder the tube in there, and that's finished. And then I can put the magnets in the bottom and polish it up. So the cap, I'm not going to show you how to make the cap. It's fairly simple. It's just a piece of that threaded rod, and I drill the hole. It's 5/16 thick, 5/16 wide, and then solder that in there. I don't thread that in there, it's just soldered in there. And you have to have a vent hole. You don't need a gasket on the gas cap either. So there's the finished gas tank without the tube. Now the magnets on these gas tanks are all the same pattern. So I can take this tank from one engine to another, and it'll fit right on there. I did that with a little jig, which let's see, this is I made the gas tank jig with the 4 holes, and that's to put it on here, and then I just drill a mark down through there and drill the holes for the magnets in here. And of course you've got to get the polarity right so that it sticks. But I always make them the same, and I do the same polarity, because if you got reverse polarity on one and the other, it's not going to stick. There it is. We'll polish it up later. Running pretty slow. I've run it a couple of hours. I've got the governor springs right down to minimum now. That's about as slow as it would run. But it's got a little noise in it, and I think it's the cam shaft. It's got too much of a point on it. I'm going to grind some off of the cam to get rid of that noise. As you can see, it runs good. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.
John.
So this is what it's about. This is the first engine. It's all finished, and I think it'll run. I can get fuel to it.
Oh, there's no fuel tank. There's no fuel tank.
Jim, how did you figure that out?
Just tell her it was Jim's fault.